For this investigation, I will be comparing the cinematography of The Other Guys and Lethal Weapon, which are two well-received buddy cop films released more than 2 decades apart. Cinematography is the best tool a filmmaker has when trying to reveal deeper meaning through symbolic themes. In my personal opinion, the most effective cinematographic element used to build symbolism in film is through the use of mise-en-scène, which I will discuss further in a moment. The Other Guys is a 2010 film directed by Adam McKay which details the story of two unlike NYPD detectives who aim to claim the title of the most formidable police officers in the city. Lethal Weapon is a 1987 film directed by Richard Donner where a widowed police officer must overcome his grief by solving crime with a very proper and oppositely straight-laced colleague. Despite historical nuances, the films are linked via the common techniques used within each film's cinematography. This is in part due to their nature as buddy cop films. According to Wikipedia, a buddy cop film is a film with a plot involving two people of very different and often conflicting personalities who are forced to work together in order to solve crime and defeat criminals. The first cinematographic commonality I noticed in both movies was in the way that falling shots of characters were used symbolically to imply meaning to the story. Beginning with the earlier film, in Lethal Weapon, Amanda Hunsaker is shot falling through the use of a low-angle shot. Director Richard Donner decided to include Hunsaker partially clothed in the scene, so it would not be appropriate for me to include the whole scene in a school project. The decision to portray her in this manner is a conscious decision of the production team, which uses the mise-en-scène of an attractive and seemingly innocent-looking young female actor to emphasize the rawness and purity often associated with the human form. The decision to use the symbolism attached to falling within the plotline of both the aforementioned films helps to better explain the characters to the audience. Literally speaking, including shots where a character falls and dies allows the movie to tell a more complete story for the viewers than just referencing it as a side event to the plot via dialogue or some other form of communication. The concept of using falls to communicate connotational meaning is seen again minutes later in the film. The main character, Martin Riggs, is faced with the task of saving a suicidal man on top of a tall building. The plot of the film to this point suggests that Riggs himself may be suicidal, which leads the viewers to consider that he may jump as well. The hero is riddled with grief and depression. The moment the two jump, the clip shifts to slow motion, which adds to the uncertainty of what will happen. The initial expectation is that the two of them will die. Through the moment's depiction on screen, the two split-second slow-motion tracking shots of them halfway down reveal symbolic meaning, that Riggs lacked control over his grief, and that he's living in slow motion, almost like a haze, following the death of his wife. The literal and symbolic meaning fuse through these shots, and they better explain how Riggs' life is essentially in freefall. The shots emphasize the character's lack of emotional control. The use of falls to communicate actual and implied meaning is similarly seen in The Other Guys. However, it has a different meaning and connotation than the fall scenes in Lethal Weapon, which aim to explain a character's emotional hardship. Danson and Highsmith are live fast, die young characters who are introduced as very well accomplished crime fighters. However, the glory that comes along with this reveals their overinflated egos. The beginning of the film makes it clear that their police work is comically intense and dangerous, and that this echelon of crime fighting is becoming increasingly risky and egotistical for them to continue. Their self-worship fogs them, leading the duo to believe their accomplishments make them immortal. The partners are convinced they can leap from a skyscraper and survive. The use of a high-angle shot from the point of origin of the fall symbolically reveals that Danson and Highsmith cannot continue to maintain their self-indulged lifestyles, fueled by this utterly insane and inane level of risk-taking police work. High shots are used cinematographically to display the weakness of the portrayed characters. This iconic shot in the film symbolizes the weakness that lies within the egotistical side of human nature. The production teams of both these films believe that shooting the scenes in this fashion would add implied meaning to what is precisely affecting and influencing the characters on screen. The fall of Amanda Hunsaker uses the mise-en-scène of her nudity to add symbolic meaning, which adds an element that contributes to the formation of the plot. A low-angle shot of the fall adds to the overall helplessness of the scene, as we observe the troubled character fall to her death. This manner of shooting grants the viewer a better understanding of the existence she was giving up before she died. Shortly thereafter, this method of shooting is used again in the film to build instantaneous suspense as Riggs is seen via slow-motion tracking shots free falling. This method of shooting reveals the existential uncertainty within the two fallers. The other guy similarly takes advantage of the symbolism behind a fall, but instead they use a high-angle shot to display the inner weakness of the two hotshot detectives. Both directors rely upon convention of genre, and these common methods of shooting build both a literal and symbolic storyline. Films in the buddy cop genre can be subdivided into two main categories: comedy-leaning buddy cop and action-leaning buddy cop. That being said, most action-leaning buddy cop films contain elements of comedy and vice versa. Action is a foundational aspect in the development and thickening of the plot of buddy cop films. Even the most comedic-leaning buddy cop film needs action to keep things interesting, as it introduces uncomfortable events, which build both the characters as well as the plotline. As a result of its genre, buddy cop film parallels to action film through elements such as on-screen explosions, widespread destruction of property, vehicular pursuit, weapons and hand-based violence, kidnapping, extortion, and smuggling, just to name a few. In buddy cop, cinematographers intentionally shoot the subjects while also keeping shots quick to emphasize the action of the element. Both films include elaborate car chases that allow the cinematography team to shine. Per normal within modern Hollywood pursuit scenes, the quickly paced clips are cut on action and movement. The shots quickly shift from shots following the chaos to shots up close on the faces of the involved parties. This method of shooting adds a needed feeling of franticness to the scenes. The mise-en-scène in both hot pursuit scenes emphasize the massive destruction of property and the desperation of the involved parties. This builds a greater sense of action to the chase. Finally, well-timed explosions can be used in buddy cop films to instantly mix up a storyline. The production teams of both movies went from nonchalant and expectable shots of dialogue right into a large explosion. When comparing the clips, the build-up to the explosions appear to be nearly identical. Perhaps this was Adam McKay, director of The Other Guys, wishing to pay homage to Lethal Weapon for its influence on the genre through this brief moment of relative uniformity. Either way, Hollywood production teams know that through the correct use of mise-en-scène, a large, unexpected explosion can instantly change a storyline. The cinematography of both scenes immediately changes the color and lighting of the scene, and therefore its overall mood. Both scenes show large fireballs, which encompass the majority of the shot. Symbolically, this displays the vulnerability of the duo. I'd like to thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your time.